Okay.
Alright, so let's start off with what does Erickson say? Go back. If you think about when we did the theories in the very beginning of class, remember Erickson offered us something about every single age span. Okay, so what's the focus for Erickson on infants and toddlers?
Well, there's the basic trust versus mistrust.
Alright, basic trust versus mistrust. Alright, what did you guys say about trust? So you guys are going to be looking at your slides, looking at your notes, and adding to trust versus mistrust. Alright, what did you guys say about trust versus mistrust? It's the third slide on the first page.
Well, care is sympathetic and loving to the child.
He believed that a healthy outcome during infancy does not depend on the amount of food or oral stimulation as Freud did, but rather on the quality of caregiving. And then he recognized that no parent can be perfectly in tune with the baby's needs.
Why? Why can't we be perfectly in tune with babies? Why? Why can't we always pick them up when they cry? Always?
Because you don't know why they're doing it. They
Right.
can't talk to you. They can't communicate with you. Except
Right.
to cry.
Has anyone ever experienced or seen a parent who is overly involved with their baby? As soon as the baby cries, they can't think, they can't focus, they can't get things done. They just always, and it drives them to the point of absolute insanity. Have you guys ever experienced that before, right? Why can't you be perfectly in tune with a baby? You have to survive, right? You have to feed yourself, feed the child. I mean, there's no possible way to stop. Babies have to learn to self-soothe, so it's impossible to be perfectly in tune, nor is it healthy to always meet every single demand that the baby makes. And like Jenny said, we don't always know where they're crying, so we can't be perfectly in tune with them. But he said what makes a difference is what?
The balance of care.
Right. And how should care be? In order for a child to be trusting, remember Erickson said either in the first year of life we learn to trust or we learn to mistrust. So how do we learn to trust people?
From our caregivers.
From our caregivers. If our caregivers act how?
Sympathetic and loving.
Right. Okay. So now I'm almost 40 years old, and they don't do this anymore. But in my generation, if I would have been given up for adoption, I would have been institutionalized because my generation was the last that really experienced an orphanage. Okay. So you would have been institutionalized or given over to an orphanage, and they really did away with that about 10 years after I was born. So I have a brother-in-law who was institutionalized while he was waiting for adoption and did not have a primary caregiver that we know of, and has really felt like in adulthood he's had some issues with trust because he missed having that attachment to one particular person. Now some of you think, I want you to think back. Now do you remember that first year of life? What did I call this chapter? Infancy, the most what? Unforgettable?
Forgettable.
We forget it, right? It's the most forgettable part of our lives because we don't remember it. But what happens there is so critical. It's the most important but forgettable part of our lives because we don't remember it. But yet, what happens? Did you have someone in your life that provided you with love? Did you have someone in your life that cared for you? Have you ever met somebody who really did not have that?
Yes.
You may not know it. Have you met somebody with a trust issue before?
Yes.
Have you met somebody before who has a pretty negative view of life?
Yes.
It is possible, according to Bowlby's theory and Erickson's theory, that this happened in the first year of life. That they just didn't have somebody there. And because they did not have somebody there, it's resulted in some really permanent, lifelong repercussions. All right, what else does Erickson say?
There's also autonomy versus shame and doubt.
Okay, so that happens at what age?
Toddlerhood.
Okay, toddlerhood. What does autonomy mean? What do you think autonomy means? What is it? This is very, 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 very important. What does autonomy mean?
Do it by yourself, independently.
By myself.
Yeah.
How are we going to do it?
With guidance.
By ourselves, right? And what do toddlers want to do?
I do it.
I do it. My turn. And you're trying to get out of the house in under 25 minutes, right? And what do they want to do?
Trust the child.
Right. My daughter has insisted her zipper is broken on her jacket. It's making me crazy. It's making me absolutely crazy because the zipper is broken. So you know how sometimes with some zippers you have to get them in just right or the whole coat unzips from the bottom?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it's a hand-me-down for my girlfriend. I'm very grateful for it, but I have to, it's very particular. So you gotta put it in just right, pull that zip all the way to the bottom and then zip it up. And we have an argument almost every single day about this coat. Today she came downstairs, she goes, oh, it's going to be a big coat day today, isn't it, Mommy? Yes, it's going to be a big coat. Because I've been looking for another winter coat, I don't want to spend more than $10. It's the end of the season, can't find one. So I found her a little zip-up jacket, but she can only wear it when it's warmer. Because it's for live, you know, she's got to wear a winter coat when it's snowy. It's like, yep, Eden, it's going to be one of those days. You got to wear the big coat. And finally she looks up at me and she goes, okay, fine, Mommy, I'll let you zip it this morning. And I was so grateful for that because it's usually a little argument between us because she wants autonomy. She wants to be able to zip up her coat by herself. So they want to do it by themselves. Now, here's what starts happening to us, right? As caregivers, as parents. Do we always support that? Do we always encourage independence?
No. You just want to get out the door. You just want to go.
Right, because we want to get out the door and want to go. What else? What else? What about how your mom cared for you? Or how your dad cared for you? Or how your grandma cared for you?
Nurturing independence creates positive.
Right.
So someone is going to be there to do it for you all the time.
It creates confidence. So when you know that you can do it yourself, you're confident that you can try something new.
Right.
And also conquer that.
Right. My boys would like very much if I would still cut their pancakes. Right? Because I cut them in neat squares. And my son looked at me on Saturday morning and he goes, he's 7, he's like, I really have to cut them myself? I was like, yes, you really have to cut them yourself. I'm not going to cut up your pancakes. Because some kids really like that, right? Some kids like us to keep helping them. Other kids are more independent, but no matter what, we learn in the second year of life, either I can do it by myself, I'm a big boy, or I'm a big girl, or I'm not very good at doing it by myself. My mom always does it for me. My dad always does it for me. The teacher always does it for me. At Head Start, has anyone been at a Head Start before? Am I with Head Start? Okay. How do they teach them about eating? What do they do with eating?
Well, the meal time.
Yeah.
And they serve themselves.
They serve themselves.
Set the table.
They set the table by themselves
Right.
at 3 years old.
Nice.
So nobody cuts up their food. Nobody cleans up after them. Nobody does anything for them. And I was in a Montessori program once observing a student, and she was working with the older toddlers. So these are 2-year-olds. And I said, how's it going? She said, it's very good, but let me tell you, I'm Arabic, and in my culture, we nurture and take care of our children for a long time. And one of the hard things for me about this Montessori program is, by 2, when they go to the bathroom, they have to do it by themselves. They have to pull up their own pants, they have to wash their own hands, even when they're potty training. If they have an accident, they have to take off their wet underwear, they have to put it in a bag, they have to get their own lunchbox out, they have to open up all the containers that they can, put away their lunchbox, and they clean up their pots and they do all that themselves. All by themselves. Right? So think about that. What kind of environment are we making for kids? Are we fostering independence, or are we breeding dependence in them? Okay.
Attachment disorganization.
We're going to go on to that slide later. That's it for this slide? Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, good job. All right. Next group. Emotions. Who did emotions? You guys. All right, come on up. Talk to us about emotions. When do emotions appear? We are on page 250. Page 250. Emotions, when do they appear?
Can you guys move over, please, so I can get you on this?
Gotta be on film. Come on, lady.
Thanks.
Okay, go ahead. Melissa says, no way. It's just for Kyandra, that's it. All right, go ahead.
So between 6 to 10 weeks, the parent communication evokes a broad grin called the social smile. They're born with a smile. Between 4
What's
to 6.
the difference between a social smile and a smile?
I'm not really sure.
What do you think it might be? Anybody? Melissa, Nada, what do you think?
Social smile would be more when there's social situations going on.
And a regular smile is just
Just
what?
when you're smiling, happy about
Just,
it.
yeah,
gassy
it doesn't really have
smile.
much meaning, right?
The gassy smile.
You start talking to them, and they will really smile and respond to you. Okay. Why is a smile important developmentally? Why is it important to have a baby respond?
Smiles encourage caregivers to be affectionate and stimulating.
Perfect response, right? Right. Okay, keep going.
Between 4 to 6 months, anger expressions increase and intensify. But they're born with general distress. And
So
then,
they can make that mad face. You see that mad? Okay.
then their facial expressions, vocab, and body movements express sadness between 2 to 7 months.
So by 2 months, what are they expressing?
Sadness.
Sadness. You can see sadness. Have you guys ever seen a baby that's sad? A lot of people say there have been some studies about cries. There are different cries. There's a cry when they're hurt. There's a cry when they're sad. There's a cry when they're lonely. There's a cry when they're hungry. And a lot of moms that are in tune can really tell the difference between those cries. Okay?
And then stranger anxiety is being uncomfortable around unfamiliar adults.
And when do we see that happening?
Between 8 and 12 months.
I'm thinking about me. That's going to be important, right? Because how old is she? She's 10 months old, right? And so she's exhibiting something called stranger anxiety. And we'll talk more about that when we get to attachment. Okay? These are the next one too, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Around 3 to 4 months, infants become sensitive to the structure and timing of face-to-face interactions.
So is it, are they responding to video interactions or face-to-face?
Face-to-face.
Face-to-face.
Like gaze and smiling
Yep.
or vocal.
Right.
They expect their social partner to respond to the time and reply with positive vocal and emotional responses.
So babies expect what?
Positive vocal and emotional reactions.
So they expect you to respond to them. When they're babbling at you and they're cooing at you, they're waiting to see what your response is. And remember over here when we talked about the still face? There have been a lot of very, very cool studies that have been done, okay, about babies with the still face where they have a mom with a 2-month-old and the baby is used, the baby's about here, the mom's talking to her, how are you doing, I love you, just cooing and talking and having a good time with that baby. And then they tell the mom, and you can hear the baby babbling back and looking back. Even when you watched Anna, that little newborn baby, did you see how that little baby was looking at the mom? There's something going on there. It's called emotional conjugation. And so what happens is on these studies, they say to the mom, don't respond. Don't respond. Hold the baby here. Get ready, like you're going to talk to the baby like you normally do, but don't do anything. And the mom will make her face still. And they wait to see what happens with the baby. And what they find consistently is babies will make about 60 attempts to engage the caregivers before they exhibit that still or sad face. But eventually, that face comes. So what happens when a mom's depressed? What happens?
The baby gets sad.
Yes. What they find is there's a strong connection between mothers that exhibit depression or postpartum syndrome and babies that exhibit depression. Because that baby's trying. It's trying to get a response out of its mother, its caregiver, its father, its grandmother, its infant worker. It's trying to get the response. But let's say that infant worker comes to work that day, and she's going through a divorce, and she can't pay her bills, and she's having a very difficult time, and now she's going to care for a baby. Does she have the emotional energy to talk to a baby? Maybe, maybe not. Some people can put their personal lives aside and really focus on their infants, and some people struggle with that. So thinking about what kind of consequences does that have? Another study in your textbook talks about how some infants, and this is going to go to attachment and quality of care, experience in the first 2.5 years of life 50 caregivers when they're in child care. 50 caregivers. So how do you build a relationship when you've had 50 different people?
If they're in child care.
In child care, it's not uncommon. No. 50 different, if they start off at 6 weeks in child care, it is not uncommon for them to have 50 different caregivers. Parents might transfer centers once or twice. Many centers transition
in the first year?
In the first 2.5 years of life.
Oh.
2.5 years of life. That's still a tremendous amount of different caregivers coming in and out of their lives. Somebody here was asking me about childcare for their daughter, and they said, what's really concerning to me is one time I counted, and my daughter in 1 week had 8 different teachers. Because she's transitioning, and she's at that 2-year-old age where she changes ratios. And because she changes ratios, they'll move the little girl around. From room to room and teacher to teacher. And she said it's very confusing to her when she goes to school. She never knows who her teacher's going to be or what their routine is going to be. And it's very common in child care centers. Very, very common.
It's sad.
It is sad. And babies respond with sadness. with
that
that.
I don't mean to interrupt, but is that going to be part of that STAR system? that you were
Absolutely.
talking
The
about?
primary caregiver, we're going to talk about that when we get to primary caregivers. All right. This emotional conjugation, let's talk about that in early infancy. And do you guys have anything else to add to this?
Yeah, by 4 and 5 months, they gradually become better at matching specific facial vocals.
Very good. That's very important. So at 4 to 5 months, and I want you guys to draw a little red flag here. Okay? That's a horrible, you can't see that, it's horrible. But I'm drawing a red flag. It's a green flag for me. Blowing in the wind. And it says at 4 months, they should be able to match facial expressions to the caregivers. Now, a red flag is something that we look for if there's a developmental delay. This is important. If at 4 to 5 months a baby does not respond facially to that emotional conjugation, that dance between mother and baby, if at 4 to 5 months that baby does not respond with the correct facial expression to what their caregiver is exhibiting, something could be wrong. What's the something that could be wrong? Any ideas? What could be wrong? Babies aren't expressing appropriate social responses. Autism, absolutely. Big, huge red flag for autism. Now, one of the really interesting things, and we're going to talk about this more when I get to the early childhood with my son, is when I decided to actually go back and watch video with my son, I really spent some time looking at his infant videos to see what happened to him and when it happened to him. And what was very interesting to me is when I went back and watched those videos in the first year of life, he is responding appropriately. We have a strong emotional dance. He is strongly referencing me. When I smile, he smiles. When I babble, he babbles back. We have great eye contact between each other. But one of the things you would really look for if a child is not expressing themselves, is not engaging you socially, is a possibility that something socially could be wrong. And that to me is a red flag and a referral. Take them to the pediatrician, take them to early on, get them checked out. Okay, anything else?
Social referencing.
Referencing, yeah.
Referencing. They're actively seeking emotional information from a trusted person in an uncertain situation.
Absolutely. So when we exhibit fear or sadness, what does the baby do? Cries. Has fear and sadness. And there's lots of great references in your book. Children that are raised in an Israeli kibbutz, which is often subjected to terrorist attack, are going to exhibit more fear than children who are not raised in that kind of fearful situation. So kids are good, right? They figure it out. Have you ever noticed, like, you can be in the middle of an argument and all of a sudden you look over, the kids are crying and fighting and flipping out because they're feeling what you feel, you know, and you have to learn to watch those emotional displays in front of them. All right, self-conscious emotions. What do you guys have?
Each of those, the shame, embarrassment, guilt, envy, and pride, all involve injury or enhancement of our sense of self.
Okay. So, if I feel shame, do I feel an enhancement in my sense of self or an injury to my sense of self?
Injury.
Right. Okay. Now, is shame appropriate? Absolutely, it's appropriate. Because now listen, when you're 2 and you don't get your way, what do? What do you do when you're 2 and you don't get your way? Throw a temper tantrum. And when you're in the store and you see a mom and she's got like an 18-month-old right by the hand, and she's standing, and they're so mean at the grocery store, because what do they put in that darn checkout? Right at eye level. What do they put?
That is the worst thing ever.
Candy. I like the candy-free aisles. It's so mean, right? Because you're checking out, you just filled up your cart with fruits and vegetables, and your little one comes along, and right at their level, they got all that eye candy. Literally, right? All that eye candy. So you're there, and you're, darn it, and you see them. Mommy, can I have candy? No, not today, sweetheart. You haven't had your lunch. No, we already picked up some good, healthy groceries, and they throw a fit. Now, does that surprise us when they throw a fit? No. Is that our expectation that 18-month-old or 24-month-olds, we're all watching because we're very entertained by the fit, right? But it's kind of, you're like, oh, they're 2 years old, you look at the size of them. But what happens when you're 6? When a child is 6 and they throw a fit?
That's a little...
It's different, right? People are like, oh, I hope that mom's got some, right? We do. Now what happens when the child's 8 and they throw a fit? It's not appropriate, is it? So what do we teach our 18-month-old when they're throwing the fit in the candy aisle? We tell them, no, I'm sorry, you can't have that candy because we're going to have some good healthy foods. And they scream their bloody head off, and you lovingly pat them, and you put them in the cart, and you pray to God you don't lose your temper. Right? That's what we do. But we teach them, we shame them, don't we? into appropriate social behaviors. We do. And that is the way that we teach our kids how to respond appropriately and how to respond inappropriately. Some of you, when you get, your test back or your journals back, you might be mad at me. You might think, darn it, I don't think I deserve that grade. But nobody so far has screamed bloody murder. Nobody so far has smacked me across the face, right? Because you guys know that's not an appropriate behavior and you can get in some trouble for it. And your parents taught you when you were little, they shamed you into appropriate social behaviors. Now what about kids with autism? Do they experience shame?
No.
It's different, right? Because how do they experience emotion? They're flapping their hands. Now, what does a parent of an autistic child do? Do they shame them? It's an interesting question. I want you to think about that. How do we teach a child with autism an emotionally appropriate response? And do we know at this early age that a child has autism? So think about that for a minute. Okay, guilt, envy, and pride. We might tell them, good job, you did it by yourself, right? And so what's that? Pride. We're enhancing their sense of self. We want you to do that again. You put on your own clothes? High five. You made your own bed? Awesome job. You threw your plate in the garbage after you ate dinner? Good job. Oh, that was my good plate. I didn't want it to in the garbage. I've lost more forks that way, I swear. But the point is, these start to emerge in the second year, and we're really building their character and their ability to operate in society by shaming them and by praising them. Okay. Next one. Emotional self-regulation.
Strategies we use to adjust our emotional state to a comfortable level of intensity so we can accomplish goals.
Okay? So if you look at this baby, what's this baby doing? It's hard to see, but she's crying, right? What does mama do? What do we do?
Trying to soothe.
Soothe, right. Do we always stick a bottle in their mouth?
No.
What do we encourage them to do? We say, you're okay, you're all right. We're trying to get them, and I want you guys to write this word down. We're trying to get them to self-soothe. My daughter's been getting up in the middle of the night. And it's, it happens periodically, right? She'll come in my bedroom. All right, Mama, is it time to get up? It's always 2:30 in the morning. No, it's not time to get up yet, right? So last night, I said to her, in the middle of the night, I said, Eden, you know that you're okay. You tell yourself, I'm okay, and you go back to bed. And she said, okay, Mom, I'll let you know if it works. And when I woke up at 5 o'clock, I thought, okay, it must have worked, because I didn't hear her come back in. So sometimes a big part of our job is teaching them to self-soothe, teaching them to self-regulate. Self-regulation grows over that first year with brain development, and we can contribute to a child's self-regulation style. All right? This is, of all things, and this is so important, stinks. The biggest predictor for future success. The ability to self-regulate is the biggest predictor for success. Can you control yourself? Can you exchange your immediate response, okay, for a better response? Now think about that. How many of you, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but had an argument this weekend? I said you don't have to raise your hand. You had an argument this weekend, and you thought to yourself after that argument, darn it, if I had just responded differently, maybe that wouldn't have happened. Sometimes it's very hard to do when you're in the heat of the moment or somebody says something that's insulting to you. It's very, very, very difficult to self-regulate. But really, truly successful people have learned to control their emotions. I was in a conversation this weekend and somebody made a criticism of me, and my first response is, that's not true, that's not fair, and I want to call you a big fat jerk. Right? Because we feel that way sometimes. We get defensive, and then I had to step back and not say anything for 5 whole seconds, breathe deeply and go, okay, that's how you feel. I understand. Let me think about that for a while, because maybe there's some things I can change to improve the situation. It's hard to do that. It's taken a long time. Because, my immediate response is, right? But we have to get ourselves to control those things. And we start teaching that in infancy and toddlerhood. No, I know you want to scream at the candy aisle when I tell you can't have Starburst. But instead, you have to learn to say, okay, Mommy, I can wait. Right? Okay. Anything to add to this one? All right, what did you guys say about structure and temperament? That's you guys? Okay, thank you very much. Good job. Structure and temperament, come on up here. We know this, right? About babies, can you tell this? Look at that poor baby. Okay, so what do you guys say about structure and temperament?
Well, first it came from the Thomas and Chess model, where a child's behavior from parental interviews were rated in 9 dimensions, and since several of them clustered together, it left them with the 3 different types. And the ECE is when a child adapts easily to new experiences, quickly establishes regular routines in infancy, and is usually cheerful.
Okay, easy. How many of you think that you, as babies, you were easy? Your moms told you were easy babies. Raise your hand. Okay. Okay. Would that still? Would you think you're still an easy person? Because there's been a lot of research about easy. Like if that temperament really predicts an easier temperament, somebody who's easygoing. Think about that. So that's an easy style. So 40% of kids. So 4 times out of 10. And we always say this to people, you got lucky this time, right? Don't have another baby, because if you do, who knows what's going to happen, right? Because we don't think people are going to have. And then you see those people make you want to throw up. They've got 5 easy kids, right? They kept going, and it's easy. Yeah, and it's easy. You think, whatever. That's not even fair. Okay, keep going.
The difficult.
Oh, boy, the difficult.
Is irregular and daily routines.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's a child, you're trying to get them to sleep. They don't want to sleep on a nap schedule. Very
Tends
difficult.
to react negatively.
Wonderful.
They react negatively to change.
Slow to accept new experiences.
Okay, okay. Difficult. For some reason, they're difficult.
And
Right, keep
that,
going.
they said that was the most interest, and that the children, when they got in early or middle childhood, they show aggressiveness.
They can show aggressive behavior. So sometimes, and it's very interesting because 2 parents can we have kids that are different temperaments?
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely see that. Okay, keep going.
The 15% is inactive, low-key reactions to environmental stimuli, negative in mood, adjust slowly to new experiences.
Okay, so a lot of times these end up being kids with special needs. These kids are slow to warm up. They have a low level of reactivity. So think about that APGAR score. APGAR measures at birth our response. Our response to that butt slap by the pediatrician, our response to being born. So kids that are slow to warm up might have a low APGAR score. Okay?
And it said that they might have fewer problems in early years.
Okay.
And then for the 35%, they didn't fit in any of the categories. They showed unique blends of temperament characteristics.
So this is the child, one day they act one way, another day they might act a different way. Okay? Biological basis for temperament. Who had this one? Did you guys have this one? Okay, go ahead.
Physiological symptoms of. Did you guys read
Okay. You
that?
want
On
to
page
share?
yeah, the biological.
Right, it was an insert, right? Like the green page.
Physiological.
Okay, so if you guys look at 259, this talks about the development of shyness and social ability. Okay, and it did talk about the physiological correlations. Okay. So they're talking about the brain. How does the brain respond, and how does the brain's response to new information give us an indicator of whether a child is shy or not?
Yes.
Okay, and you'd say yes. Basically, what they found when they put kids that exhibited shyness on an fMRI machine, or hooked them up to an EKG machine, is that those kids exhibited higher levels of cortisol, which is an indicator of stress whenever they saw new people or experienced new stimuli. So these kids are much more stressed out by something that's new than a child who does not exhibit shy behavior. Okay? So they have a biological response. They actually have more stress hormones, more saliva in their mouth, their heart rate goes higher. So very difficult. Or uninhibited and social kids respond differently, right? They are positive. When they see something new, woo! I have very variety seeking in my life. I get bored very easily. I like to change it up, man. I don't even like to teach the same classes all the time. Give me something new. Give me a challenge. I want to do something different. So we like changes, right? Variety seeking. And think about yourself. You may not be variety seeking, right? But people that are variety seeking tend to be more outgoing. My son once told me, he asked me in the car on the way to school, he said, "Mom, what are you going to do today?" I said, "Oh, I'm gonna go teach class." He said, "Well, how many students do you have?" I said, "Oh, for the day I'll probably have 100 different students that I'll see. And then today I'm going to present at a workshop and there'll be probably 200 people there." And he goes, "Mom, that makes me want to vomit." "Your job sounds horrible." I said, "Well, that's just because we have different temperaments. You know, some people are more inhibited and some people are less. What are some of the things that we can do to counteract shyness, though? What do we do to counteract shyness?"
Gradually introduce situations to infants, children, help them, develop trust in
Absolutely.
situations.
And practicing those skills. I told that son, I was like, "And that's why we're going to sign you up every year at school for the Wax Museum," which is an opportunity. It is, to practice his public speaking. And honestly, the last 2 years he's done it, he's done a fantastic job. And I've been very proud of him. So I think that for him, it was very important for him to have exposure to those early public speaking opportunities so he can get over his shyness. Because if we can try it when we're young, we can really overcome some of those situations. But, understanding kids' temperaments. And I had to understand that it was much more difficult for him to do that than it would have been for me when I was a child to do those kinds of things. But still providing them for opportunities to practice social skills, practice speaking skills, those kinds of things, expose them to new stimuli. And for the parent to say, "It's not scary. It's fine. It's not scary. It's fine." Okay, genetics and environment and temperament. You guys have this one? Okay, that's you guys. Pop up. Tell us what you see.
I'm getting up.
Oh, okay. Just wait for you to look. Yeah. And here she comes, not leaving me, Sarah. Page 261.
Okay, we have the last two.
Okay.
And the cultural caregiving styles, it compared Asian culture and the American culture, and it said Asian cultures, they perceive that babies come into the world as independent beings who must learn to rely on their parents through close physical contact, and they view calmness as an ideal emotional state and discourage babies from expressing strong emotions.
Wow, think about that, you guys, how different that is. Japanese parents think that babies come into the world independent, and they have to teach them how to be dependent. Do we see it that way as Americans? We see babies coming into the world and they're what?
Dependent.
Dependent, and how do we have to...
We teach them to be
So
independent.
think about Yi. Case study, very important, right? What is Yi saying? What's she saying? She's been taught by her grandma that she has to be what? Dependent. Right, and now she's got a caregiver who is valuing what? Independence, right. Okay?
While the American mothers typically believe just the opposite, that they must win babies away from dependency toward
Autonomy, good, which means believing in ourselves, okay. Goodness of fit, did you guys talk about that? Back 5 of page 262.
The goodness of fit helps explain why difficult children who withdraw from new experiences and react negatively and frequently experience parenting that fits poorly within their dispositions, putting them at high risk for later adjustment problems.
Okay, so what is your parenting style? How well does it fit? Think about my poor little son. Didn't like public speaking, but yet, now does have confidence. If he hadn't had, if I wasn't his mom, his dad, my husband is actually very shy. It takes him a long time to warm up. So thinking about those two different styles, and if he had just been raised by two parents that were shy, how would he have been different? How would things have been different? So goodness of fit, how well does a child's temperament fit the caregiver's temperament? Some kids are easier. They're just more natural. You get along better. You understand them better. Some children are more difficult. Think about Yi and Amanda. They see the world a little differently. So is there a goodness of fit there? Well, absolutely. Between Yi and her grandma there was. They had nice emotional dance between them. Her needs met her grandma's style of caregiving. But what about Amanda and Yi? How are they different? How is that affecting that relationship? Okay? Pre-attachment. What do we got?
The ethological theory of attachment is basically Bowlby's theory. And the idea is that the quality of the attachment to the caregiver has a profound implication for the child's feelings of security and capacity to form trusting relationships. So basically, what happens in that baby's first few months, few years in regard to attachment is going to have long-term implications as to how they feel and react as adults. The pre-attachment stage basically takes place between birth and 6 weeks. Babies are naturally wanting their caregiver's attention. They're like, hey, here I am. I'm going to babble. I'm going to smile. I'm going to cry. I want your attention. I want you to come to me. I want you to care for me. The caregiver usually then will respond to this baby. That helps establish or set the ground for attachment. As they get older, attachment in the making happens between 6 weeks and they say like the 6 to 8 month mark. They are going to actually respond a little bit differently from their caregiver to maybe another individual. Initially, you know, if you're responding to me, I'm loving you, is basically what the baby's saying. But when you move into this attachment in the making, the baby does start to realize that, hey, there's a difference between this person, this caregiver, usually they, you know, like the mom, and maybe grandma or maybe someone else who I see frequently, but maybe baby doesn't, you know, see continually. The clear-cut attachment happens between 6 to 8 months and 2 years, and that's when we were talking about that separation anxiety. The infant realizes that, let me see here, that there is a definite difference between their primary caregiver and somebody else. So if you were to take a toddler to, you know, a daycare setting or something like that, basically what would happen is the toddler would realize that, hey, mom is going to leave me and I don't want mom to leave me, and they would do things to try to attach to that mom. They would cling to her leg, they would start to fuss and cry because they don't quite yet understand why their primary caregiver is leaving. Am I doing good so far?
Yep.
Okay. When you get to the last stage, the formation of a reciprocal relationship, they can better understand the fact that their primary giver will leave and return. I think I might have messed up the ages there. I'm not sure. That's between 18 and 2.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can begin to reason with the child. Toddler will accept the fact that mom's going to leave, but mom can come back. And if they have a secure attachment, then that's something that they can conceptualize.
One of the things I learned from somebody who is an infant mental health specialist is what you do in this stage between 18 and 24 months is anytime you leave your child with someone unfamiliar, like especially at church, this would happen. Mm-hmm. You know, at church there would be different people working in that classroom. So Eden might have, you know, a different teacher in the 3-year-old classroom every other week, right? But I'll always do this. I'll say, I'm sorry, can you tell me what your name is? Because sometimes I don't know what the person's name is when we go to large church. And so you would say, I'm Ashley, right? I would say, Ashley, this is Eden. And then I would bend down real close and get near to Eden. I'd say, Eden, this is Miss Ashley. She's very nice. I trust her. She's going to take care of you for about an hour, Eden. And then as soon as Mommy and Daddy are done with service, we're going to come back and get you. I love you, but you make sure that you talk to Miss Ashley if you need anything. Why would I do that?
To let the child know that you're okay with her.
Right. I'm telling. Remember, how is she getting her information about the world? From me. So what am I saying to her?
That Ashley's okay.
Right. What is that? But some parents like to sneak out the door.
No.
And their child is left very confused.
What message does that leave their child?
Stranger danger.
Right. And how does that leave Miss Ashley? Now, Ada might cry a little bit, you know, oh no, mommy, I don't want you to leave, but she's crying with me now. And I'm explaining to her, I understand that you don't want me to leave, Eden, but I trust Miss Ashley, and it's only for an hour, and mommy always comes back. And then you have to be sure that you do come back. My kids will always ask me, what time are you coming home today? And I, as much as I can, try and be within a 10-minute time frame of that, so they learn to trust me. So that when I say I'm coming home at that time, I'm coming home at that time. And it really relieves that pressure and stress. Okay, so measuring the security, how do we measure this? How do we figure out if a kid's attachment is secure or not? Very important. All right, what do they do?
You know, I never got to that part. You made me rush too fast.
I did rush you. All right, so here we go. We're going to do this experiment really fast. I'm going to be the mom. We're going to end with this today, and then you guys can write your case study. Sit down, you're the mom.
Okay.
Who wants to be the baby? Who wants to be the baby?
Come on, Christine.
Christine, come be her baby, okay? Okay, so here we go. This is how you guys turn the, we'll end with this. 267 and see the little green box? I'm the researcher, okay? We're in a room with a two-way glass mirror, right? And a lot of toys. So I'm going to bring you guys are in a playroom. There's lots of things. This is your mama. And so I'm going to bring you in. Hi, guys. How are you today?
Oh, we're fantastic.
Are you excited? Did you bring her sippy cup?
I did. She's got all of her
Okay.
snacks. Yep, she's
well, there's
good to go.
lots of things to play here. There's toys and blocks and everything. So I'm just going to leave you guys alone. And you play, and I'll be back in just a minute. So then the researcher would leave about 30 seconds, and so I would watch. Now, through the two-way mirror, she can't see me, but I would watch to see, are you playing? Christine, you're playing Explore, right? Right? Now, we're going to watch too to see if the baby, if she wanders away, if she gets down, if she plays with something new, but if she comes back and references her mom, right? See number 2? Then, I'm going to come in, and I'm gonna come back in. Hi guys, how's it going? And I would be watching Christine to see if maybe if she was like over there playing with some toys, what would she do? Maybe scoot back to mom. When I come in, she's gonna scoot back and get close to her mom. So use that parent as a secure base. I'm gonna say, okay, so now I'm gonna have you leave for a little bit.
Do you want me to say goodbye?
Yeah, we can say
bye.
She leaves and here I am. And now what happens?
Cries.
The baby, not all the time.
Not all the time, but most times.
Well, sometimes, right? I'm watching to see. And I'll say, oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Mom will be right back. And I would wait to see how she responds to me. Babies that are securely attached do what?
Cry.
Keep crying. What are they supposed to do? Keep crying. Babies that cry are attached. The appropriate response is to cry. If they don't cry, then guess what?
They don't
have a strong attachment. And what's optimal for development?
Attachment.
A strong attachment. I once taught this class, and I had a woman stand up, and she said, you've insulted me. I said, how did I insult you? And she said, my kids never cried, and that's because they were good kids. And she stormed out of the class. I had to follow her out and explain to her, I'm not talking about you not being a good parent. I'm just explaining attachment. Some kids are not strongly attached, and that woman at that moment had that epiphany that, oh my gosh, my kids were not strongly attached. Because she could leave her kids anywhere, and they never cried. Okay, so now you come back in, and we would watch to see, you would comfort her, tell her it's so right. Yeah, so we would look to see if the child was responding as an attached child, she would calm as soon as her mom came back in the room. She would. Now, kids that are disorganized might be angry, right? Kids that are disorganized might not go to the mother for comfort. Then there's avoidant attachment, which usually means that there's some kind of abuse sometimes. It can be an abusive situation, and they might get really anxious and they might hit. They might hit the parent when they come back in. Have you guys seen this before? Or get really upset. Sometimes, some babies may not trust that the mom's ever coming back. You ever seen babies that refuse to leave the mom's side? They won't even play at all when they're in a new situation. They're very fearful, or they're very, their attachment can be very disorganized. So then we would go through it again, and that's how we would measure attachment. All right. So we're done for today. What I want you guys to do is finish reading the rest of the chapter. You should have already read it for your quiz, and write your journal. Okay? I don't expect your journal to be more than one typed page. It can be handwritten. All right? But you're going to write your journals for me, and you're going to bring those in on Wednesday. We will finish up this last little bit of attachment with those slides that we have, so please bring your notes back. Bring me a rotation. Okay, I'll give you 5 bonus points for the rotation. All right? Your video notes I'll take if you leave them on the